Greetings, my wonderful students. Today we begin the next chapter on Congress. And we start Congress with congressional membership. Congressional sessions. Now, congressional terms start on January 3rd of odd-numbered years. Each term consists of 2 sessions lasting 1 year each. Congress used to be in session from December until March. Now Congress is in session from January to December. Congress remains in session until its members vote to adjourn. Now, neither house of Congress may adjourn for more than 3 days without approval from the other house. So let's back up and take a look at this. They start on January 3rd of odd-numbered years, because the election years are always on even-numbered years for Congress. So when the election is done, and then the votes are counted, and then the congressional term starts January 3rd after that election. And then that runs for 2 sessions, each lasting 1 year. So the first session being January to December of the first year, in the odd-numbered year, and then January to December in the second year. Now, Congress remains in session until its members vote to adjourn. It doesn't make sense for the House of Representatives to adjourn, but the Senate remain in session, or vice versa, because neither side can actually pass a bill without the other one. They have to pass bills together. Now, if Congress is adjourned for whatever reason, the President may call it back for a special session in cases of emergency, etc. This happened after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. That began World War II for us. Membership in the House. Seats in the House are divided on the basis of population. We've all learned that for a long time. Each state gets at least 1 representative. So even Wyoming, which I believe has less than 500,000 people, has 1 representative, and states that have more than that, such as Montana, have at least 1 representative. Qualifications. You have to be at least 25 years old to be a member of the House of Representatives. You must have been a legal citizen of the United States for at least 7 years. And you must actually live or be a resident of the state that elects you. Terms of office. Now, for the House of Representatives, it's a 2-year term. If a representative dies or resigns before the end of their term, the governor of their state may appoint a temporary replacement until a special election can be held. And now, representation and reapportionment. Now, because the House of Representatives is based on population, they have to figure out how many representatives each state gets. Reapportionment is using the census data to determine how many representatives a state will have. States with a population decrease, or if the population growth is slower than other states, may lose seats to faster-growing states. Originally, the House of Representatives only had 64 members. By 1810, however, there were 186 members. And by 1920, Congress passed a law limiting the number of representatives in the House to 435, which it had reached in 1911. Because the concern was, as the population continued to grow, the House of Representatives would grow until it became too large to effectively do its job. So they capped the number at 435 members of the House. Congressional redistricting. State representatives represent a single district within a state. After reapportionment, the state legislature redraws district lines to accommodate for seats gained or lost. So here you have the redistricting map of Louisiana for 2011. District 1 is over here where you see my mouse pointing at, and then District 2, and then 3, 4, 5, and 6. You'll notice they are very different sizes. And of course, the reason for this is so that each district actually has about the same number of people in it. So as you get closer to the cities, the districts are going to get much smaller. As you get out into the countryside, the districts are going to be much larger. And so if the state of Louisiana gets a 7th member, then all of these districts will have to be completely redrawn to account for that 7th member of Congress. Or if they lose their 6th member, then these districts will have to be redrawn to account for the fact there were only 5. And that's what redistricting is, and it happens every 10 years after the census. Gerrymandering. Now, you've probably heard this before. The famous picture is a political cartoon But I'm not going to show you that. I want to show you how gerrymandering actually works. And this is a good way to look at it. So we'll start off with gerrymandering is drawing districts in such a way as to give one party an advantage over another. Packing is putting most of a party's voters in one district so they have fewer representatives. Cracking is dividing a party's voters so they are a minority in most districts, weakening their ability to elect representatives. Here we have the example. So as you can see, with 50 precincts, 60% of them blue and 40% red, then blue should win the election. Now, if we draw those 5 districts in very straight, obvious lines, it's very obvious. But we could draw them differently. In this one, as you can see, I am shoving a large number of blue squares into this district. I am packing blue supporters in this region. And over here in this section, I am cracking blue out of this district so that the red overpowers the blue in this district, and the red overpowers the blue in this district, and the red overpowers the blue in this district. So out of 5 districts, 3 of them will be won by red, and 2, these 2, will be won by blue. So in a case like that, in the House of Representatives, in those 5 districts, red would win because 3 can outvote blue. 3 can outvote 2 blue. Now, the Supreme Court has ruled that congressional districts must be compact and contiguous. Along with the one-person, one-vote rule, this court case has cut down on the worst practices of gerrymandering. But it's not altogether gone, and both parties do it. Recognize that. Now, the Senate doesn't have anything to do with gerrymandering because a senator is elected statewide. So gerrymandering is only done at the House level because that's where the redistricting happens, and it's drawing the districts that causes gerrymandering. Now, there are 2 senators from each state. Qualifications: you have to be at least 30 years old to be a senator, you have to have been a citizen for the United States for at least 9 years, and you must be a legal resident of the state you represent. Terms of office. Now, they are senators for 6 years. Only 1/3 of the Senate is up for re-election at any time, so it's staggered. So this coming election year, 1/3 of the Senate will be up. And then 2 years later, a different third of the Senate will be up. And then 2 years after that, a different third of the senators will be up for re-election. If a senator dies before the end of his or her term, the state legislature may authorize the government to appoint someone, or the governor can call a special election. Salary. Now, the Senate and the House set their own salaries. The salaries in 1789 were $6 a day, which obviously doesn't sound like much, but money did go farther back then. In 2001, the salaries were $145,100 per year. Now, the 27th Amendment went into effect in the year 1992, which says pay raises for Congress go into effect after the next election. So if you vote yourself a pay raise, before you're going to see that pay raise, there's going to be an election held. And if people are really upset that you gave yourself a raise, they could vote you out of office. So you might vote for a raise not necessarily for yourself, but for the guy who's going to beat you in the next election. Go figure. When senators and representatives retire, they may be eligible for pensions for retirement plans based on how many years of service they have. Privileges of the members. When attending Congress, members are free from arrest, except in cases of treason, felony, and breach of the peace. A member of Congress cannot be sued for anything they say on the floor of the House or the Senate. For example, there was a Senator, Harry Reid, who lied about a presidential candidate during a presidential election, and he did so to damage that person's standing in the election. Now, if he were not a senator, and if he was not actually stating it on the floor of the Senate, he could have been sued for libel or slander for basically saying false things. But because he said so on the floor of the Senate in his capacity as senator, he cannot be sued for that. Congress may record a vote of formal disapproval or censure actions of its members in the cases of bribes or offenses. So if you get caught being bribed, Congress can censure you. And also, if you are found guilty in a court of law of bribes or treason or other crimes, they can be expelled from Congress, as well as subject to criminal proceedings, actually going to prison. Congress has 435 voting members, the 435 members of the House, plus the 100 senators who vote. There are 100 senators, 435 representatives. Now, nearly half of Congress is made up of lawyers, and I feel confident putting that up here is because there's always been large numbers of lawyers entering Congress. Many also come from the business sector, from banking, from education, and other places as well. Now, there are 5 non-voting members in the House, one from each of the territories the United States has that are not states. These include the District of Columbia. Washington, D.C. is not a state, but its people do need some representation, but they cannot vote on bills in the House. Then you have Guam, American Samoa, the Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. These 5 members attend sessions. They introduce bills to be voted on. They speak in debates, and they can vote on committees whether or not they think the bill is good or should be advanced, but they may not vote on whether or not the bills actually become laws. Incumbents are candidates who are currently in office. So the current president is called the incumbent. Now, incumbents are usually elected, so membership in Congress usually changes slowly, but that doesn't always happen. In the mid-1990s, for example, growing dissatisfaction swept most incumbents from power. It was called the Republican Revolution, and it was the first time the Republicans had taken control of both houses of Congress in 30 years at that point. And then, in 2006, another wave of dissatisfaction swept most of them from power. And it's happened a few times since then as well. So this is something to look at as it seems the society becomes more polarized. We're seeing this more and more. Only the future will tell what happens next, and I hope you enjoyed this lesson.